lucky to have heard that original recording of a gentleman in 1543 sat in his living room in front of the fire, reading the paper and sounding fascinated by a bit of news. Astounding stuff. Hello, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. Hope you've had a good, fulfilling week, and you haven't been thinking too much about Sonnet 81. I know I haven't lost too much sleep over it, personally. It hasn't ingrained itself into my brain like some of the others have. But look, that's in the past now, and we're moving on to, yep, you guessed it, it's Sonnet 82. And it struck me today, I didn't actually know how many bloody sonnets this guy wrote. And it turns out, just looking now actually, live on microphone, 154 is what he's done. So actually very nearly halfway there. So that's something to cheer about, isn't it? Halfway, he did a lot, didn't he? And I was actually reading that the first 120 or so are all about this young man that scholars have called the fair youth. That's just become a thing. I don't think he's ever mentioned in the first 82 sonnets fair youth, has he? So why is everyone calling this man fair youth that Shakespeare's writing about? Where's that come from? What scholars invented that? I think, personally, that's a bit tame, and sexy young man is a bit more interesting. So let's from now on refer to Shakespeare's muse as sexy young man. With that said, let's dive into Sonnet 82, shall we? I grant thou were not married to my muse, and therefore mayst without attaint o'erlook the dedicated words which writers use of their fair subject, blessing every book. Thou art as fair in knowledge as in hue, finding thy worth a limit past my praise, and therefore art enforced to seek anew some fresher stamp of the time-bettering days. And do so, love. Yet, when they have devised what strained touches rhetoric can lend, thou, truly fair, wert truly sympathized in true plain words by thy true telling friend. And their gross painting might be better used where cheeks need blood. In thee it is abused. So there we have it, Sonnet 82. And it's become very clear that Shakespeare, firstly, is still talking to and about the sexy young man. And he is indeed still comparing himself to other writers. But I'd say the difference is, in the last one, he was sort of saying, look, I am just a little vessel, and these other writers are big ships, and, little old me in the ocean. Take me or leave me. But in this one, it feels like he's sort of bigging himself up a little bit more and saying, look, here I am, I'm Shakespeare, and I'm the only one that can write these amazing things about you, really, because I'm your true friend. Interesting he uses the word friend, because I would say, having read 82 of these sonnets so far, I think the relationship is a little bit more than friendship. But look, that's just my hot take. So, I think it's about time we dive into this line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about in Sonnet 82. So we start with, I grant thou wert not married to my muse, and therefore mayst without attaint o'erlook the dedicated words which writers use. So here he's saying, look, I understand that you're not married to my poetry. Alright, I get it. So it's totally legit for you to go away and read what others write about you. That's absolutely fine. Eat your heart out. Go on. Go away, read those other writers. Have a good time. I'm not worried. I will say that starting a poem like that does make you sound a little bit like you are worried, Shakespeare, just for future future poems. And then, of course, he's saying the dedicated words which writers use of their fair subject, blessing every book. So, of course, the other writers, you are their beautiful subject, their fair subject of their books. Plain and simple. Thou art as fair in knowledge as in hue, meaning you are as knowledgeable as you are sexy and beautiful. Finding thy worth a limit past my praise, and therefore art enforced to seek anew some fresher stamp of the time-bettering days. So here I think he's saying, and I understand why you read these other writers, because, look, it's not possible for me to praise you enough. So you're forced to go out and seek some other fresh writing by some modern poets, not like me, Shakespeare, dusty old Shakespeare, churning out the same old shit. I mean, it's not the same old shit, but I mean, 82 sonnets, some of them are very similar, so I understand why this fair youth would want to go away and seek some other forms of poetry, some other writers. I get it, to be fair, and it looks like Shakespeare kind of gets it as well. But I find it interesting that he's saying, seek anew some fresher stamp of the time-bettering days. So he's saying his style of writing is almost old-fashioned, is slightly outdated, and he understands why the fair youth would want to go and find some new forms of writing, some beat poetry perhaps. No, that's 400, 500 years too early for beat poetry, but you know what I'm talking about. Then we continue with, and do so, love. Yet when they have devised what strained touches rhetoric can lend, thou, truly fair, wert truly sympathized in true plain words by thy true telling friend. So here he's saying, go ahead, do so, go out and read these other writers. My love, interesting, he says, my love, doesn't say that too much in the other poems, but here he's very blatantly saying, my love. But, and we all know by now Shakespeare likes a good but. But let me tell you this, whilst these other writers use, flowery and elaborate, overcomplicated language, you, as beautiful and sexy as you are, you'd be better represented by, sort of truthful, plain words told by a friend. So almost in the same breath, he's calling this sexy young man his love, and then at the end saying friend. I mean, make your mind up, Shakespeare. You're confusing the poor guy. Is he your friend or is he your lover? But I guess this is sort of an indication of the new poetry that is coming out at the time, which is maybe really flowery and elaborate language and overcomplicated, which is interesting because often we think of Shakespeare like that, not overcomplicated but quite flowery and complex. But apparently these new writers at the time were even more elaborate and flowery than we're used to. And he's saying that's too much, actually. They're overcomplicating it. You need to get down to simplicity, beauty. Look at my poetry, and I'm your friend, so I know you the best. Am I your friend? Are we more than that? But listen, I'm your friend, and I know you really well, and I can write in plain words how beautiful you are. And now we move on to the final couplet. And their gross painting might be better used where cheeks need blood. In thee it is abused. I really like this final couplet. I think it's a good witty little ditty. A witty ditty. Quite a harsh last couple of lines, but I think here he's essentially saying these other writers' praise that I've just been talking about would actually be better used on uglier people. Cheeks that need blood. Pale. Sad, pale men that are a bit gaunt and, quite frankly, disgustingly ugly. Their words, their elaborate, flowery, over-embellished poetry is better used on these ugly men. In you, it's wasted. It's misused. It's abused. So that's Sonnet 82, and I think from breaking it down, it's clear that he's saying, he's fighting back. He's saying, look, go away. It's totally, you're in your right to go away and read these other writers and what they're saying about you and their flowery language and all that. But look, my writing, plain and simple, saying it how it is better, all right? It's purer. Right, I think it's about time we put this to our story. And if you remember last week, Shakespeare, he's sort of entangled in this weird love triangle with Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe. He, of course, is trying to win back Christopher Marlowe from Ben Jonson, who's been writing these, dare I say, flowery and elaborate poems to Christopher Marlowe. And they've been working, to be fair. Anyway, Christopher Marlowe agreed to meet William Shakespeare in the cemetery. You know, the cemetery in London, the big one, the main one. And they met there at night, and Shakespeare read him Sonnet 81, which is just all about death, actually, not really the sexiest of topics. But he was saying, look, when you're dead, your monuments will be my poetry. And my poetry is so bloody powerful that you will live on through my pen. So actually he was pretty confident in his Sonnet 81. And interesting to remember that he didn't even mention other writers in 81. I sort of forgot that. In Sonnet 80 he was talking about other writers. 81 he was just talking about how amazing his writing was. So interesting that in Sonnet 82 he goes back to talking about other writers. Anyway, I digress. That's where we're up to. Shakespeare had just got out Sonnet 81 and read it in this graveyard, in this cemetery, to Christopher Marlowe. Let's find out what happens next. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 81 to Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe says, "Wow, that was quite the poem, Shakespeare. I didn't know you thought so fondly of your own writing, dare I say." Shakespeare says, No, I don't think you quite understood what I was saying. I was saying you will live on forever through my writing. And Christopher Marlowe says, I get it. I mean, you're saying that your writing is so powerful that I will live on forever through that. Don't you think that's a little bit arrogant, dare I say? And Shakespeare said, no, it's not arrogant. I'm saying, isn't it amazing that you will live on forever through my writing? Because you're so amazing, not my writing. It's because you're so hot and sexy and beautiful and not my writing. I mean, anyone could write. Well, not anyone. I mean, not anyone could write about you like I do. But what I'm saying is you're just such an amazing subject. And Christopher Marlowe says, I see. Well, I have to say, I don't think that sonnet was quite up to scratch. I'm sorry, Shakespeare. I thought it was a little bit... it missed the mark. Shakespeare said, what? Sorry, sorry, I must have misheard you. You said the sonnet, the writing, it missed the mark. Christopher Marlowe says, yes. You see, I've read a lot of poems recently. A lot of people have been getting in contact with me. A lot of young, hot writers. And their style is rather beautiful. A lot more elegant than your writing. Shakespeare says, sorry, more elegant, more beautiful than my writing. I don't think that's possible. Oh, I assure you, Shakespeare, it is possible. I mean, even Ben Jonson's last bit of writing was a lot more beautiful than what you've just read me. What? Ben Jonson's bit better than me? Christopher Marlowe says, yes. I mean, look, I think I've got one of his latest poems on me now. Take a little read of this, Shakespeare. You might learn a few things. Shakespeare grabbed the Ben Jonson poem from him and read, You're like a rose, red beautiful petals, like your rosy red cheeks. You're like a ship, sturdy and strong. You're like the sky, beautiful and fresh. I love you. Sorry, is this some kind of joke? That's the poem. And Christopher Marlowe says, yes, I mean, it's complex, it's beautiful, isn't it? And Shakespeare says, sorry, are you pulling my leg? That's the poem. No, that's not beautiful. Look what I've just read you about death and about how you're going to live on forever. And then you're reading this about some blue skies and roses and petals and stuff like that. That's insane. Christopher Marlowe says, look, Shakespeare, you got to get with the times. That's the new writing that everyone's digging these days. Everyone's digging that stuff. Okay, Christopher. If that's the writing you're so into, why don't we have a poet off? Me and Ben Jonson. We'll meet tomorrow in London Town Square. You know it, the Town Square. The big one, the main one. And we'll each read one poem. And from that, you will decide who is the best poet and who you will love forever. Marlowe says, okay, I'll see you tomorrow, Shakespeare. Good luck writing. And with that he disappeared into the night. Shakespeare ran home as quick as he could, his little shoes clippity-cloppity on the cobbled streets. He spent the whole night writing, drafting, redrafting. He tried to write in this new style that all the young, hip poets were writing in. But every time his quill touched the paper, he couldn't help but write in his traditional, simple style. And eventually he thought, you know what? I've got to stay true to myself here. And he penned Sonnet 82. It was a triumph. He talked about the new styles. He talked about his old style. He talked about simplicity. He talked about love. He talked about friendship. It was, quite simply, 5 stars. To his mind, anyway. Word had spread, and the next day, in the town centre, there was a rather large crowd that had gathered of drunkards and peasants and nobility and all sorts, all walks of life. Ben Jonson had obviously been told by Christopher Marlowe to prepare his best poem, and he joined Shakespeare on a little makeshift stage. Christopher Marlowe was in the front row of the crowd, cheering and whooping, and rather enjoying having these 2 men fight over him. Ben Jonson went first. Hello everyone, I've got a rather lovely little poem that I wrote last night, and I think you'll all enjoy it. Here we go. Candles burn, just like my love for you. Thou art the most beautiful creature I have ever seen, like the sun rising at first dawn, or the glistening snow on white-capped mountains. Thou art the greenest of grasses, and the bluest of oceans. Thou art mine, thou art ours, thou art the world's. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. The crowd whooped and cheered. They did enjoy his poem. There was no doubting that. Next up, Shakespeare. He had to admit to himself that he was a little nervous after hearing that doozy from Ben Jonson. But he stuck to his guns and pulled out Sonnet 82 from his back pocket and read, Sonnet 82. I understand that you're not married to my poetry, and it's totally fine by me if you read what others write about you, you being the incredible subject of their books. You are as knowledgeable as you are sexy, and you see that it is not possible for me to praise you enough, so you're forced to seek out some new, fresh writing from some modern poet. Go on, do it. I don't mind, my love. But let me tell you this. Whilst these writers use flowery and elaborate language, you, as beautiful as you are, would be better represented by the plain words of your truth-telling friend. And these other writers' over-embellished praise would be better used on ugly people that need to be flattered. For you, this rhetoric is misused. Wowee, so there we have it, Sonnet 82, and this story is heating up. Whose poem will Christopher Marlowe like the most? Find out next week on The Final Couplet. Until then,